The AC in my '09 Silverado quit working 2 summers ago, and I kept telling myself I'd fix it next week, next month, when business picked up at the body shop. Now the hot air blasting through the vents smelled like burning dust and Mateo's goddamn tachus. The purple bag, the ones that stain his fingers, that nuclear red-blue color that gets on everything. My steering wheel had smudges of it. My work shirts. The kid ate them constantly, even though his abuela said they'd rot his teeth, even though I told him they made the truck smell like a gas station bathroom. Dad, can we stop at the Stripes in Cutula? Mateo had his phone pressed against his face, probably texting his cousin Rafa. 13 years old, and the kid's thumbs moved faster than I could change spark plugs. I need to pee. You just went in dilly. I checked the rear view. Highway 35 stretched behind us, heat waves making the asphalt shimmer. Tuesday afternoon traffic was light. A few semis, a border patrol truck that passed us doing 90. You got a bladder the size of a peanut or what? That was like an hour ago. That was 20 minutes ago, Mijo. I merged into the right lane, behind a cattle truck that smelled exactly like you'd expect. You can hold it till Laredo. Mateo went back to his phone, and I went back to thinking about Claudia's lawyer. Third payment was due Friday, and I was short. Again. The divorce had been final since February, but the payments kept coming: child support, her car insurance that I was somehow still responsible for, half the credit card debt from when we were together. My boss Vicente kept promising me more hours, but the shop was slow. Everyone was broke. Nobody was fixing their cars. They were limping them along with duct tape and prayers. The radio crackled. AM stations were shit out here. Nothing but static and Mexican norteño that cut in and out. I turned it off. Mateo didn't look up from his phone. Your mom called this morning, I said. I know. You gonna call her back? Maybe. He shrugged, still texting. She just wants to complain about Rafa's grades again. I didn't push it. Claudia had moved to Monterrey 6 months ago with her new boyfriend, some regional manager for a grocery chain who wore cologne that cost more than my truck payment. She'd wanted to take Mateo with her, but I'd fought that. Burned through my savings on lawyers to keep him in Texas, keep him in school, keep him with me. The judge had ruled in my favor, said a kid Mateo's age needed stability, needed to stay in one place. Claudia called it selfish. I called it being a father. The first sign that something was wrong came at mile marker 82. A woman stood on the shoulder of the highway, waving both arms over her head. Her Honda Civic was parked at an angle, hazards blinking. I slowed down automatically. You don't leave people stranded out here, not in this heat. But as I got closer, I saw her face. Blood, all down the front of her white work blouse. Her mouth was open, but she wasn't making sound. Just standing there waving, her movements jerky and wrong. Don't stop, Dad. Mateo had looked up from his phone. Something's weird. She might need help. Dad, seriously. Don't stop. I pressed the gas, swerving back into the left lane. In my side mirror, I watched the woman turn to follow the movement of my truck, still waving. Still silent. Maybe she was in an accident, I said, but my voice sounded uncertain even to me. That wasn't accident, blood. Mateo had his phone up, scrolling. Rafa just texted me. He says there's something on the news about people in San Antonio getting sick. Like attacking each other sick. Rafa watches too many movies. He sent me a video. Mateo held up his phone. I glanced at it, shaky footage of what looked like a Walmart parking lot, people running, someone on the ground. I couldn't make out details. Put that away. You're gonna make yourself sick. Dad, put it away. He did, but his leg started bouncing the way it always did when he was nervous. I'd seen that leg bounce through his abuelo's funeral, through the custody hearing, through the last fight I'd had with Claudia before she left. The kid inherited my anxiety, my wife used to say. One more thing to feel guilty about. The second sign came at mile marker 73. A Texas state trooper had someone pulled over, but the scene was all wrong. The trooper's car door was open, the lights flashing, but no one was in the vehicle. The person who'd been pulled over, a man in a business suit, was face down on the asphalt. Not moving. The trooper was nowhere to be seen. Dad, we should. I see it. I slowed down but didn't stop. As we passed, I saw the man's hand twitch. Just once. Like he was trying to push himself up but couldn't remember how. My phone rang. Vicente. Javier, you watching the news? His voice was tight, the way it got when he was trying not to panic. Where are you? About 40 minutes north of Laredo. What's going on? San Antonio's on lockdown. They're saying some kind of infection, people going crazy, biting each other. Man, I don't know. It sounds like movie shit, but it's on every channel. They're telling everyone to stay home. I felt my stomach drop. We're headed to Laredo. Mateo has his checkup with the dentist tomorrow. Fuck the dentist, Javi. Turn around. Come back to San Antonio. You just said San Antonio's on lockdown. Then stop somewhere else. Just don't go south. The border's gonna be chaos. I looked at Mateo. He was staring at me, his phone forgotten in his lap. I'll call you back, I said and hung up. What did Vicente say? Mateo's voice was small. He says there's something happening in San Antonio. An infection or something. I kept my voice steady, the way I did when I was explaining to him why his mom and I were splitting up, why she was moving to Mexico, why life was about to get harder. We're gonna stop in Pearsall, okay? Get some food, figure out what's going on. What about the dentist? We'll reschedule. But when we got to Pearsall 20 minutes later, the Stripes gas station was packed. Cars lined up at every pump, people arguing, someone crying. A man in a sheriff's uniform was trying to direct traffic, but no one was listening. I pulled into the parking lot, found a spot near the propane tank exchange. Stay in the truck, I told Mateo. Where are you going? To figure out what the hell is happening. Inside the store, the TV behind the counter was on CNN. The sound was turned up too loud, and everyone in the store was staring at it. A news anchor with perfect hair was trying to maintain composure while behind her, footage played. Crowds of people, stumbling, attacking, military vehicles in the streets of what looked like downtown San Antonio. Reports coming in from across South Texas, the anchor was saying. The CDC has issued a shelter-in-place order for all counties within a 100-mile radius of San Antonio. Officials are urging residents not to approach anyone exhibiting symptoms of infection. What are the symptoms? Someone asked. The anchor looked down at her notes. Extreme aggression, loss of cognitive function, and she paused. There have been reports of infected individuals displaying unusual strength and a resistance to. The signal cut out. The screen went blue, then black, then switched to a test pattern. Fucking satellite, the cashier muttered, smacking the side of the TV. I grabbed my phone. Tried to call Claudia. The call wouldn't go through. Tried again. Nothing. Outside, someone was screaming. I ran out of the store and saw a woman pointing down the highway toward the south. Other people were gathering, looking in the same direction. I followed their gaze and felt my mouth go dry. A crowd was coming up Highway 35. Not walking, running. Dozens of people, maybe hundreds, all moving together in a stumbling, uncoordinated mass. Even from this distance, I could see they weren't right. Their movements were wrong, jerky, like puppets on tangled strings. Someone fired a gun. The sheriff, I think. The crack of the shot made people scream, scatter, run for their cars. I sprinted back to my truck. Mateo had his face pressed against the window, eyes wide. Drive, Dad. I threw the truck into reverse, nearly clipped a Honda trying to do the same thing. Everyone was trying to leave at once. Cars bottlenecked at the parking lot exit. Someone laid on their horn. The crowd on the highway was getting closer. I saw the first one clearly when it was maybe 50 yards away. A woman in a Whataburger uniform, her orange shirt soaked in dark blood. Her mouth was open, teeth bared, and she was making a sound, a low, wet moan that shouldn't have been able to come from a human throat. Dad, I see her, Mijo. I see her. I cranked the wheel, jumped the curb, drove through the empty lot next to the gas station. My truck bounced over the uneven ground, and I heard something scrape under the chassis. Probably the muffler, probably just cost me $300 I didn't have, but I didn't slow down. I got back on the highway going south, toward Laredo, because north was blocked and east, and west were nothing but scrubland and fence. In my rearview mirror, I watched the crowd reach the gas station. Watched them swarm over the cars that hadn't gotten out in time. I didn't let myself think about the people inside those cars. Call your mom again, I told Mateo. Keep trying. He did. His hands were shaking so bad he could barely hold the phone. The call wouldn't connect. The radio started working again about 10 miles south of Pearsall, but I wished it hadn't. Every station was the same, emergency broadcasts, evacuation orders, lists of shelters that were already full. One station was just playing a recorded message on a loop. If you or anyone in your household is experiencing symptoms of infection, do not attempt to seek medical care. Remain in your home. Lock all doors and windows. Help is coming. Help is coming, I repeated. Bullshit. Mateo wasn't looking at his phone anymore. He was staring out the window, watching the landscape roll past, mesquite trees, barbed wire fencing, billboards advertising injury lawyers and fireworks stores. Normal Texas highway shit. Except now there were other cars on the road, more than there should have been for a Tuesday afternoon. Everyone heading the same direction. South, toward the border. Are we going to Mexico? Mateo asked. I don't know yet. Which was the truth? I didn't know anything. My phone kept buzzing, texts from Vicente, from my brother Tomas, from people I worked with, but I couldn't read them while driving, and I wasn't going to stop. Not with the way traffic was starting to bunch up, cars packed closer together the further south we got. Try your mom again. He did. Shook his head. I tried to think. Laredo was maybe 30 minutes away now, and then what? The international bridge would be chaos, always was, even on a normal day. Lines of cars stretching for miles, border patrol checking documents, the whole process taking hours. If everyone was trying to get across today, with whatever the fuck was happening behind us. The truck in front of me braked suddenly. I slammed on my brakes, felt the Silverado's worn pads grind. We stopped inches from the truck's bumper. Traffic had come to a complete stop. Shit. I put the truck in park, leaned out my window to see what was happening. Ahead, the highway was packed solid with vehicles. I could see red brake lights stretching for what looked like miles. Dad. Mateo's voice had gone very small. It's okay. Just traffic. Probably an accident or... No, Dad. Look. He was pointing out the back window. I turned and saw what he saw. More cars piling up behind us, and beyond them, maybe a mile back, movement on the highway. The same stumbling, running crowd we'd seen in Pearsall. They were following the traffic south. Okay. I put the truck in drive, pulled onto the shoulder, started driving on the narrow strip of gravel between the highway and the fence. Other people had the same idea. A line of vehicles was forming on the shoulder, everyone trying to bypass the gridlock. My truck bounced and scraped over the rough ground. Behind me, someone laid on their horn, as if that would help anything. We made it maybe 2 miles before the shoulder ended. Road construction ahead, concrete barriers blocking the way. I had to merge back onto the highway, squeeze into the line of stopped traffic. A woman in a RAV4 wouldn't let me in. I forced my way anyway. She flipped me off. I didn't care. How far to Laredo? Mateo asked. I checked the GPS on my phone. 12 miles. How long will that take? I don't know, Mijo. The sun was starting to drop toward the horizon. We'd been sitting in traffic for 20 minutes, moving maybe 100 feet in that time. Around us, people were getting out of their cars, looking north, pointing. The crowd was closer now. Close enough that I could see individual figures. Close enough to hear the sound they made, that low, collective moan. Someone started shooting again. I saw muzzle flashes from a few cars ahead, heard the crack, crack, crack of rifle fire. Whether they hit anything, I couldn't tell. The crowd kept coming. Dad, we should run. Mateo was gripping his seatbelt. Get out and run. Where? There's nothing out here but... Anywhere. We can't just sit here. He was right, but I couldn't make myself open the door. Some stupid part of my brain kept insisting that the truck was safe, that as long as we were inside with the doors locked, nothing could get to us. Same part that used to tell me everything would be fine with Claudia if I just worked harder, paid the bills on time, kept my mouth shut during her mother's visits. My phone rang. I answered without looking at the screen. Javier. It was Tomas, my brother. Where are you? Highway 35, about 12 miles north of Laredo. Traffic stopped. I didn't know how to explain what was behind us. There's infected people following the cars. Listen to me. Don't go to the bridge. You hear me? Don't go to the international bridge. Why not? Because they closed it. Border Patrol sealed the whole thing an hour ago. Nothing's getting through. Everyone's trapped there. I felt my stomach drop again, harder this time. What are we supposed to do? There's other ways across. Unofficial ways. Tomas. I'm serious, Javi. You got cash on you. Maybe $60. That's enough. When you get to Laredo, don't follow the main roads. Take Route 1472 west toward El Cenizo. There's people helping folks get across. You'll have to pay, and you'll have to walk, but... Someone screamed. Not over the phone, right outside my window. I looked up and saw the crowd had reached the back of the traffic line. People were getting out of their cars, abandoning them, running. The infected were pulling drivers out through windows, dragging them down to the asphalt. Tomas, I gotta go. Get to El Cenizo. Find the guys with the boats. I dropped the phone, threw the truck into drive, and pulled onto the shoulder again, this time not caring what I hit. My bumper clipped a Dodge Charger. The driver shouted something. I kept going. Mateo was turned around in his seat, watching the chaos behind us. Dad, they're in the cars. There. Don't look. Just don't look. But I was looking. In the rearview mirror, I saw the infected swarm over the gridlocked traffic like ants on spilled soda. Saw them pull open car doors, shatter windows, drag people out screaming. Saw those people stop screaming and start moving like the others, jerky and wrong, joining the crowd. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The Silverado's engine roared. We bounced over the shoulder, through the construction zone, past the concrete barriers that scraped hell out of my driver's side. Mateo braced himself against the dashboard. I didn't tell him to put his seatbelt on. We were past the point where seatbelts mattered. Route 1472 was a Tulane County road that wound through scrubland and past abandoned farmhouses. The GPS on my phone kept trying to redirect me back to the main highway, but I ignored it. Tomas had said El Cenizo, said there were people with boats. I didn't let myself think too hard about what that meant, about crossing illegally, about the risk, about what would happen if we got caught. Getting caught seemed better than the alternative. The sun had set. My headlights cut through the dark, illuminating mesquite branches and the occasional reflective eyes of an animal, coyote or javelina or something bigger. Mateo had stopped asking questions. He sat with his arms wrapped around himself, shivering even though the cab was still hot from the broken AC. You okay, Mijo? He nodded without looking at me. We're gonna be fine. Your Tio Tomas knows people. We'll get across, get to Monterrey, find your mom. What if she's not there? She's there. But what if she's not? What if the infection is there too? What if? Mateo. I reached over, put my hand on his shoulder. We're gonna be fine. He didn't look convinced, but he stopped talking. We saw the checkpoint 15 minutes later. I came around a curve and there it was, a makeshift barrier across the road, vehicles parked on both sides, and a cluster of men in uniforms that I couldn't quite make out in the dark. I slowed down, my hands tight on the wheel. Is that Border Patrol? Mateo asked. I don't know. As we got closer, I saw it wasn't Border Patrol. Or if it was, they weren't in their official capacity. The uniforms were mismatched, some in camo, some in sheriff's department gear, some in plain clothes with rifles slung over their shoulders. They'd set up sawhorses and floodlights, turning the narrow road into a choke point. A man stepped out into my headlights, holding up his hand for me to stop. I did. He walked up to my window. Up close, I could see he was maybe 50, with a gray beard and a Smith County Sheriff's Department patch on his jacket. He had a pistol on his hip and a tired, angry look on his face. Where you headed? He asked. South. Trying to get across the border. Bridge is closed. I know. I'm looking for, I hesitated, alternative routes. He studied me for a long moment, then looked past me at Mateo. That your son? Yes. How old? 13. The man nodded slowly. Behind him, the other men at the checkpoint were watching us. One of them had a rifle pointed casually in our direction, not quite aimed but not aimed either. Listen, the sheriff said. Officially, I can't tell you how to get across. Unofficially, there's people about 2 miles further down this road. They got boats. They'll take you across for $500 a head. I don't have that much. Then you better figure something out. He stepped back from the window. You can't stay here, and you sure as hell can't go back north. Why not? Because everything north of here is gone. San Antonio fell 2 hours ago. Austin's going now. They're evacuating Dallas, but from what I'm hearing on the radio, it's not gonna matter. This thing, whatever it is, it moves fast. And it doesn't stop. Mateo made a small noise beside me. I wanted to tell him not to listen, but what would be the point? He needed to understand how bad this was. We both did. 2 miles south. I asked. Yeah. Look for a white pickup with Mexican plates. Ask for Esteban. Tell him Gutierrez sent you. The sheriff paused. And don't trust anyone else. There's people down there who'll take your money and leave you to die. Esteban's straight. He'll get you across. Thank you. He nodded and waved me through. I drove past the checkpoint, watching in my rearview mirror as the men pulled the sawhorses back into place behind me. Dad. Mateo's voice was barely audible. What if Mom's already dead? I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Because I'd been thinking the same thing, trying not to think it, trying to focus on the road and the next step and the problem right in front of me. But the thought was there, had been there since we left Pearsall. What if we got across and there was nothing to get across to? What if Mexico was just as bad? What if Claudia was? She's not dead, I said. She's smart. She'll find somewhere safe. But you don't know that. No, I don't know that. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm scared, Dad. Me too, Mijo. Me too. The white pickup with Mexican plates was parked at the end of a dirt road that led down to the Rio Grande. I almost missed it in the dark. Would have, if not for the flashlight someone was waving. I pulled up next to the truck and killed the engine. A man approached my window. Short, maybe mid-40s, with a face that had seen too much sun and too many bad decisions. You looking to cross? Gutierrez sent me. Said to ask for Esteban. I'm Esteban. He looked past me at Mateo, then back at me. 500 each. I only have $60. Then you're not crossing. Please. My son, we need to get to Monterrey. His mother's there. I'll get you the rest of the money. I swear. I'll send it to you, whatever you want, just... I've heard that before. Esteban started to walk away. Wait. I grabbed my wallet, pulled out everything I had, 3 20s and a 10. Then I dug in the center console, found another 20 crumpled up under the registration papers. $80. And I looked at Mateo. Give me your phone. What? Your phone. Give it to me. He handed it over. I gave it to Esteban along with the cash. The phone's worth at least 300. That's 380 total. Just please, get us across. Esteban looked at the phone, turned it over in his hands. For a long moment, I thought he was going to say no. Then he pocketed it along with the cash. One trip, he said. You and the kid. That's it. And if you try anything stupid, I'll leave you both in the middle of the river. Understand? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Save it. Get out of the truck. We got out. Mateo stayed close to me, his hand finding mine in the dark. Around us, I could see other people, families mostly, some with suitcases, some with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They were all waiting by the river, talking in hushed Spanish and English, looking north like they expected to see something coming. Esteban led us down a narrow path through the brush. Thorns caught on my shirt, my jeans. Mateo stumbled, and I caught him. The Rio Grande was low this time of year. In some places, I could see sandbars and rocks breaking the surface. But it was still wide, still dark, still dangerous. There were 3 boats, aluminum fishing boats with small outboard motors. Esteban pointed us toward the middle one. Get in. Don't stand up. Don't make noise. When we get to the other side, you run. You don't stop, you don't look back, you just run. The cartels own that stretch of river, but if you're fast and you're lucky, they won't bother with you. Understand? I nodded. We climbed into the boat. There were 4 other people already inside. A woman with 2 small children and an older man who might have been her father. Nobody spoke. The woman's children were crying quietly, and she was trying to shush them. Esteban pushed the boat away from the shore and started the motor. It coughed, sputtered, then caught. We moved out into the current. The water was darker than the sky. I kept one hand on Mateo's shoulder, the other gripping the side of the boat. The motor was loud, too loud. I kept expecting someone to start shooting, expecting searchlights to cut across the water, expecting border patrol or cartel or something worse. But nothing happened. We crossed in silence, the boat rocking gently, the motor whining. I looked back once and saw the Texas shore receding behind us, the scattered lights of El Cenizo and the checkpoint further north. Then I looked forward toward Mexico, toward whatever was waiting for us there. We were maybe halfway across when we heard it. A helicopter. The sound came from the north, growing louder, and then the searchlight hit the water, maybe 50 yards upstream from us. The beam swept across the river, catching one of the other boats in its light. Get down, Esteban hissed. We all pressed ourselves flat against the bottom of the boat. The searchlight moved closer. I could hear the helicopter's rotors now, could feel the vibration in my chest. The woman's children were crying harder. She tried to cover their mouths. The light swept past us. For a moment, it illuminated the inside of the boat. I saw Mateo's face, pale and terrified, and then it moved on, continuing its sweep downstream. Stay down, Esteban whispered. Don't move until I say. We stayed down. The helicopter circled overhead for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. Then the sound of the rotors began to fade. The searchlight moved back north, toward the Texas shore. Okay, Esteban said. We're good. I sat up slowly. Mateo did the same. The Mexican shore was close now. I could see the dark line of vegetation, the rocky beach. Esteban cut the motor and let the boat drift the last few yards, then jumped out into the shallow water and pulled us up onto the sand. "Go," he said. "That way." He pointed toward a gap in the brush. "There's a road about half a mile inland. Follow it west. You'll hit a town eventually." "Thank you," I said again. He ignored me, was already pushing the boat back into the water for the return trip. Mateo and I climbed out onto Mexican soil, except it didn't feel like Mexican soil. It felt like the same dirt and rocks and thorns as the Texas side. Same moon overhead. Same stars. The border was just a line on a map, meaningless now that the world was ending. We started walking. The town Esteban had mentioned turned out to be more of a village. Maybe 24 houses, a church, a tienda with bars on the windows. It was past midnight by the time we got there, and the streets were empty. No cars. No lights in the windows. No dogs barking. "Is everyone gone?" Mateo whispered. "I don't know." We walked through the village carefully, staying close to the buildings, avoiding the open plaza in the center. I was looking for a phone, a car, anything that could help us get to Monterrey. But everything was locked. Everything was dark. At the far end of the village, we found a gas station. The front door was broken, hanging off its hinges. Inside, the shelves had been stripped bare. No food, no water, no supplies. Just empty metal racks and a few scattered candy wrappers. "Dad, look." Mateo was pointing at the wall behind the counter. Someone had written something in spray paint. "Los muertos caminan. Huyeron al sur." The dead walk. They fled south. "It's here too," I said. "The infection. It's here too." Mateo didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at the words on the wall. I felt something break inside me then. Some last piece of hope I'd been holding on to. The idea that if we just got across the border, everything would be okay. That Claudia would be safe. That Mexico would be different. That there was somewhere in the world that wasn't falling apart. But there wasn't. The infection didn't care about borders. It didn't care about citizenship or documentation or which side of the river you were born on. It just kept moving, consuming, spreading. "What do we do now?" Mateo asked. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was small for 13, still had that softness in his face that would probably harden over the next few years if we lived that long. His tacka-stained fingers were gripping his elbows, and he was shivering again, even though the night was warm. "We keep going," I said. "We find your mom." "But what if?" "We keep going." Because what else was there? We'd burned our cash, traded our phones, crossed illegally into a country that was probably just as infected as the one we'd left. We couldn't go back. We couldn't stay here. All we could do was keep moving south, keep hoping, keep pretending that somewhere down the road, there was something worth reaching. Mateo nodded slowly. He didn't look convinced. Hell, I wasn't convinced. But we started walking again, following the empty road south, toward Monterrey, toward Claudia, toward whatever was waiting for us in the dark. Behind us, the helicopter searchlights swept across the river, looking for more people trying to cross. Looking for more desperate families making the same impossible choice we'd made. And somewhere north of the border, in the towns and cities we'd left behind, the infected kept moving, kept spreading, kept consuming everything they touched. I thought about Vicente, probably dead in his body shop. About the woman in the Whataburger uniform, her mouth open in that terrible moan. About the people in the gridlocked traffic, the ones who hadn't gotten out in time. I thought about how I'd promised Mateo we'd be fine. How I'd promised Claudia I'd keep him safe. How I'd broken every promise I'd ever made. "Dad," Mateo's voice pulled me back. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah, mijo. Do you think we're gonna make it?" I wanted to lie to him. Wanted to tell him that of course we'd make it. That everything would be okay. That we'd find his mom and figure out a way to survive this. But I'd been lying to him for months. About the divorce, about the money, about how much his mother's leaving had hurt me. I was tired of lying. "I don't know," I said. "But we're gonna try." He thought about that for a moment. Then he took my hand again, the way he used to when he was little, and we'd cross busy streets in San Antonio. "Okay," he said, and we kept walking. The road stretched ahead of us, dark and empty. My feet hurt. My throat was dry. I had no cash, no phone, no plan beyond putting one foot in front of the other and hoping that somewhere in the darkness, there was still a world worth surviving for. Behind us, the searchlights kept sweeping. The helicopters kept circling. The infected kept spreading across both sides of the border, turning everything they touched into more of themselves. And my son's hand in mine was the only thing that felt real anymore. The only thing worth holding on to. The only thing that mattered. I didn't look back at the river. Didn't look back at Texas, at everything we'd left behind, at the life I'd been trying to build out of the wreckage of my marriage and my mistakes. I just kept walking south, toward Monterey, toward Claudia, toward the hope that maybe, just maybe, we'd find her alive. That maybe, just maybe, she'd still want us. That maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth crossing that river for. But deep down, in the part of myself I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew the truth. The world had ended back in Pearsall when we saw that first crowd. Everything since then was just delaying the inevitable. Just running from something we couldn't outrun. Just pretending that the border meant anything anymore. Mateo stumbled. I caught him. He looked up at me with his mother's eyes, dark and scared, and still holding on to some small piece of trust that I hadn't completely destroyed yet. Keep going, Mijo, I said. Just keep going. And he did. We walked through the night, through that village and past it, following a dirt road that eventually connected to a paved highway. Route 2, according to a weathered sign. It ran parallel to the border for a while before curving south toward Nuevo Laredo. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon when we saw the smoke. It rose from the direction of Nuevo Laredo, thick black columns that stained the morning sky. Too much smoke for a single fire. Too much smoke for anything good. Maybe it's just, Mateo started then stopped. There was no point in finishing that sentence. We both knew what the smoke meant. My legs were screaming. We'd been walking for hours, and my work boots weren't made for this kind of distance. Mateo was limping. His sneakers had holes in them that I'd kept meaning to replace, kept putting off because there was always something more urgent, always another bill, always another expense. Now he had blisters, probably bleeding, and there was nothing I could do about it. We need to rest, I said. What about Mom? We're no good to her if we collapse. I pointed to a cluster of buildings about 100 yards off the highway. Let's check that out. Maybe find some water. The buildings turned out to be an abandoned ranch. The main house was boarded up, the barn missing half its roof. But there was a well in the yard, and when I turned the handle, water came out. It tasted like rust and minerals, but it was cold and wet, and I'd never been so grateful for anything in my life. We drank until our stomachs hurt, then filled an empty plastic bottle I found in the barn. Mateo sat down in the shade of the house, took off his shoes. His socks were soaked with blood. Jesus, Mijo. I knelt down, examined his feet. Why didn't you tell me? Didn't want to slow us down. Let me see if there's anything in the house. I tried the back door locked. The windows were boarded, but one of the boards was loose. I pried it off and climbed inside. The house had been abandoned for a while, but not looted. The furniture was covered in sheets. The kitchen still had dishes in the cabinets. I found a first aid kit under the bathroom sink, still sealed in plastic. Whoever lived here had left in a hurry, taking what they needed and leaving everything else. I brought the kit outside and cleaned Mateo's feet as best I could. The blisters were bad. A couple had already popped. I wrapped them in gauze, then found him a pair of old boots in the house that were only slightly too big. Better? I asked. Yeah, thanks, Dad. We sat there for a while, not talking, just resting. The sun climbed higher. The smoke from Nuevo Laredo kept rising. Somewhere in the distance, I heard gunfire, a long, sustained burst, then silence. Do you think anyone made it? Mateo asked. Like anywhere? I don't know. Because if everyone's infected, then what's the point? Why are we even? Don't. I cut him off, harder than I meant to. Don't think like that. But Dad, we're alive. You hear me? We're still alive. And as long as we're alive, we keep moving. We keep trying. We find your mom, and we figure it out from there. He looked at me with those dark eyes that were too old now, that had seen too much in the last 24 hours. You really think she's alive? I wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it, but I couldn't lie to him anymore. I hope so, I said. I really hope so. We rested another hour, then kept walking. The highway stretched south, empty except for a few abandoned cars. We passed a bus on its side, windows shattered, luggage scattered across the asphalt. I didn't let Mateo look inside. Around noon, we saw our first infected on this side of the border. She was far off the road, stumbling through a field of dead corn. Her dress was torn, her hair matted with something dark. She didn't seem to notice us, just kept walking in that jerky, wrong way, heading south like everything else was heading south. Stay quiet, I whispered to Mateo. Don't run. Just keep walking. We did. The woman never looked in our direction. But after that, we saw more of them, scattered across the landscape like discarded trash. A man sitting in the middle of the highway, staring at nothing. A group of 3 or 4 clustered around something we couldn't see and didn't want to. A child standing in a driveway, swaying slightly, her school uniform still pristine except for the blood on her hands. The infection had crossed the border before we did. Maybe it had been here all along, spreading in the shadows, waiting to explode. Maybe borders never mattered. Maybe we'd been running toward the same thing we were running from. Dad. Mateo's voice was small again. I'm scared. I know, Mijo. What if we can't find her? What if she's like them? I stopped walking, turned to face him, put my hands on his shoulders. Listen to me. Whatever happens, whatever we find in Monterey, we're together. Understand? You and me. We don't split up. We don't leave each other. No matter what. Even if. No matter what. He nodded slowly. His chin was trembling. He was trying not to cry. Come here. I pulled him into a hug. He wrapped his arms around me and held on tight, the way he used to when he was little and had nightmares. Back when I could still make him feel safe. Back when hugs meant something. I'm sorry, he whispered into my chest. For what? For being scared. For slowing us down. Mateo, stop. None of this is your fault. You hear me? None of it. But if we'd stayed in San Antonio, we'd be dead. Or worse. I pulled back, made him look at me. We made the right choice. The only choice. Then why does it feel so wrong? I didn't have an answer for that. So I just held him again, there on the side of the highway in the Mexican heat, with the infected scattered around us and the smoke rising from Nuevo Laredo, and the helicopters still circling somewhere to the north. After a while, we started walking again. We reached the outskirts of Monterey as the sun was setting. The city sprawled before us, bigger than I'd expected, more modern. I'd been here once before, years ago, for a wedding. I remembered restaurants and shopping centers and a nightlife that Claudia had loved. The city had felt vibrant then, alive. Now it looked like every other place we'd seen. Smoke rising, streets empty, cars abandoned, a few buildings on fire in the distance, the flames visible even in the fading light. Where does Mom live? Mateo asked. Colonia del Valle, East Side. I tried to remember the address Claudia had texted me months ago. An apartment building near a park. She'd sent me a picture, modern, with a security gate and a doorman. She'd been proud of it, proud of her new life with the boyfriend who could afford places like that. How far is that? Maybe 5 miles. We can make it before dark if we hurry. We entered the city on foot, following Avenida Constitution. The streets were littered with debris, broken glass, overturned trash cans, articles of clothing. A few cars sat with their doors open, engines still running, gasoline pooling on the asphalt. No bodies that I could see, but plenty of blood. Dark stains on the sidewalks. Handprints on windows. We passed OXXO convenience store with its windows smashed. Inside, the shelves were bare. We passed a pharmacy also looted. We passed a church with its doors barricaded from the inside. I could hear people behind those doors, voices, crying, praying. I thought about knocking, asking for help. But something told me they wouldn't open. Something told me they'd seen too much already, trusted too little. The sun dropped below the horizon. Streetlights started coming on, some of them anyway. The power grid was still working, at least partially. That had to mean something, right? That had to mean someone was still alive, still maintaining things, still trying to hold civilization together. Or maybe it just meant the automated systems hadn't failed yet. Maybe the lights would stay on long after everyone was gone, burning electricity for an audience of the dead. Dad, I think someone's following us. I looked back, saw movement in the shadows about a block behind us. Couldn't make out details, but the movement was wrong. Too jerky, too familiar. Come on. I grabbed Mateo's hand and pulled him into an alley between 2 buildings. We ran, our footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind us, I heard that sound, that low, wet moan. The alley opened onto another street. We crossed it, kept running. My lungs were burning. Mateo was keeping up, but barely. The borrowed boots were slowing him down. There, he pointed at an apartment building ahead. The front door was hanging open. We ran inside. The lobby was dark, lit only by emergency lighting. A security desk sat empty, the guard's coffee still steaming in its cup. I grabbed the cup, still warm. Whoever had been here had left recently. Elevator or stairs? Mateo asked. Stairs. Always stairs. We found the stairwell and climbed. I didn't know where we were going, just knew we needed to get away from the street. Away from whoever, whatever, had been following us. On the 3rd floor, we found an apartment with its door ajar. I pushed it open slowly, listening. Nothing. The apartment was empty but intact. Someone had left in a hurry. There was food on the table, a television still playing in the living room. The news, in Spanish, showing footage I didn't want to watch. I turned off the TV, locked the door, found a chair, and wedged it under the handle. "We'll stay here tonight," I said. "Rest. Then we find your mom in the morning." Mateo nodded. He was exhausted. We both were. I checked the apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen. The fridge still had food. The water still ran. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, a moment preserved from before the world ended. We ate cold leftover chicken and drank bottled water. Then Mateo went to one of the bedrooms and collapsed on the bed. I sat in the living room, watching the door, listening to the sounds outside, distant screams, gunfire, car alarms, breaking glass. The sounds of civilization tearing itself apart. I thought about Claudia, about her apartment in Colonia del Valle, about whether we'd find her there, about what we'd find if we did. I thought about the choice I'd made at the border, to cross illegally, to risk everything on the chance that Mexico would be different, that we'd be safe here. What a stupid, desperate choice that had been. But what else could I have done? Stayed in Texas and died? Let Mateo die? At least here we had a chance. However small, however unlikely. I must have dozed off at some point, because I woke to Mateo shaking my shoulder. "Dad. Dad, wake up." "What?" I sat up, disoriented. The apartment was dark. The streetlights outside had gone out. There's something outside the door. I listened. Heard it. Scratching. The wet sound of breathing that wasn't quite breathing. "Stay quiet," I whispered. We sat there in the darkness, barely moving, as whatever was outside the door scratched and moaned and tried the handle. The chair I'd wedged held. After what felt like hours, the sounds moved away, down the hall, toward the other apartments. "We can't stay here," Mateo whispered. "I know. We should go now, while it's distracted." He was right, but the thought of going back out there, into the dark streets with the infected and the fires and the sounds of dying. "Okay," I said. "Get your shoes on." We left the apartment as quietly as we could, taking the stairs down to the lobby. The front door was still open. Beyond it, the street was dark except for the distant glow of fires. We stepped outside and started walking east, toward Colonia del Valle, toward Claudia, toward whatever was waiting for us there. The city around us was dying, maybe already dead, and we were just 2 more ghosts moving through its corpse, pretending we still had somewhere to go, pretending that anything we did still mattered. But we kept walking anyway, because what else was there to do? We kept walking and hoping and holding on to each other in the dark. And somewhere ahead, maybe Claudia was doing the same thing. Maybe she was alive. Maybe she was waiting for us. Maybe she'd know what to do next, how to survive this, where to go when the whole world was burning. Maybe. But probably not. Probably she was dead. Probably we were walking toward nothing. Probably we'd die before we ever reached her apartment, and no one would ever know we'd tried. But we had to try anyway. Had to keep moving. Had to believe that somewhere in this darkness, there was still a reason to keep going. Even if the only reason was each other. Even if that wasn't enough. Even if it had never been enough. Mateo's hand found mine in the dark, and we kept walking.